A good place to end right there. I love kids' church. It's the best. Thank you, honey, for sharing that wonderful children's story. Andres Garcia is going to be our speaker, our sermon giver this morning. And many of you know him, some of you may not. Andres Garcia is my assistant, he's my right arm. Sometimes he's my right and left arm. And he's been working with me this summer and throughout this last year. I worked in Coldwater here for a month. But this summer, Andres, you just want to give us a quick report of what you've been doing this last week? And then, don't do your sermon yet.
Oh, okay. So we have 2 programs. Last year we only had one here around Indiana. We're all over the place. But right now we're in Cicero and covering Indianapolis and all around it. And the other team is in Crown Point and all around it. So we have about, I think, close to 40 students alongside with this small group here. And by God's grace, we've been getting a lot of testimonies, a lot of books out there, even some Bible studies. People who want to read the books and want to study more from the Bible. So we have, I think, 8 more weeks to go. So please pray for us as we continue on. You guys may have seen some of the youth at the camp meeting running around, but pray for us for safety, for breakthroughs, even in the young people's lives who are doing the work, that they might see breakthroughs as well.
So I have an idea. We have around 40 people in the 2 teams, plus the 10 here, so about 50 people. What if, and hi to my Facebook friends who are watching right now, this is not a serious comment, but I do want you to think about it seriously so you can get a grasp of what they're doing. What if I had you leave your houses and we could all camp at the church for 2 months? And every day we get up, we have breakfast together, and then we have worship together, and then we can have training together, like soul-winning training. And then we go out and go door to door from right around noon until 9 o'clock at night. Think the church would grow? If you didn't die off first, we would grow, amen? That's what this group's doing this whole summer, so keep them in prayer. And I know realistically that's not going to be you, but you can keep them in prayer, because even though they're young, they still miss their couch. Amen. Now, before Andres speaks, I'm going to introduce the team that's been working right here for this week. Some of the parents are here as well. Thank you for coming. And they have some testimonies they're going to share. Why don't you guys come and stand up right here in the front? And I'm not sure Q who's leading. Let me introduce you to Q first. Q is a student at Andrews University, and he has a lot of things up his sleeve. Eventually, he's going to get a theology degree, if I'm right, or a master's in something in the ministry realm, and chaplaincy. Okay. And he has also medical studies, and he's a grease monkey on the side and a cold porter for a couple weeks as well. So he's great to have him on the team. But why don't you introduce your team to us again? I know you already have this morning for Sabbath school, but and then have them share a couple stories.
Good morning, everyone, again. We're very privileged to have this group of youth, and I think I mentioned this already, but this is probably the favorite group I've ever worked with. I really love these kids. They're super helpful. They're very enthusiastic. Every one of them seems to have a genuine relationship with God and a genuine love for souls. It's really impressive. So please be welcoming to them when you meet them in person. Guys, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves, and just something brief that you've learned in the last week.
Hi, my name is Ben. I'm from New Albany, Indiana. And something I learned, that whenever you put your heart into something, it really pays off. And even whenever it's hard, if you keep pushing, then you'll see God work in your life.
My name is Marley, and one thing I've learned while being here is that matter how many doors that you knock on, and no matter how many people reject you, there's always going to be at least one person that will take the time to talk to you. So keep trying.
Amen. Amen.
My name is Zane, and I'm from Adventist. One thing I learned this past week was that no matter how many books you sell, the most important thing that you can offer is a chance to know Jesus.
My name is Grace. I'm from Anderson, and the thing that I've learned is sometimes it's helpful for other people to talk to you while you're dancing.
I'm Cameron Urbanic, and I'm from Cicero, Indiana. And I learned that no matter how many people reject you, there's always going to be one that welcomes you.
Hello, I'm Dante, and I learned that no matter how much you study the Bible and you think you know it, that there's always more to learn.
Amen. So one of the things that Culpepper teaches you that a lot of ministries don't teach you is how to deal with rejection, how to be steadfast, and how to be persistent and persevere. That's a difficult lesson, but every one of these kids has had doors slam on their face, they've been run off properties, they've been yelled at, and yet they persist. How many of you guys see the value of that? Isn't that an amazing thing? So now what we're going to do is we're going to share some of the fruit of our labors. Go ahead and going to call Omar up. Can you please tell us, I want you guys to hear just how amazing this work is. Our brother Omar here wouldn't be here if it wasn't for literature. So please share with us the story of how you and your mother came to the church.
Okay, so about 5 years ago, we were living in an apartment in Madison, Indiana, or Hanover, Indiana, and I can't remember, either my grandma bought us the flyer, or I found it outside building the window. I can't remember. So I picked up the flyer, and I thought it was kind of cool because there was a dragon on it, and I just kind of looked at it, and then I was going to just throw it back on the ground, and something told me to pick it up. So then I picked it up, I brought it in, I showed it to my mom. So then after that, we started going to some of the meetings, and I see about a month later, we officially became Seventh-day Adventists.
So yeah, while it does seem like we're just having fun, and it does seem like we're just training the kids, the reality is people are genuinely being touched by this work. So angels are with us. Zane, can you come up and share with us your testimony?
Good morning, church family. How are you?
Good morning.
It started a week before this mission trip. I was listening to a song by the News Boys called "That's How You Change the World." It was a good song, and I was like, how can I change the world? Because if I was given the opportunity to help somebody, then I would. About a couple days later, friend Dante asked if I'd be interested in going on a cold water mission trip here in Marion. It wasn't until later in the week that I realized that's what I'm doing. I am changing the world. This is the opportunity I was waiting for.
Okay, so I think 2 days ago, we were down not the nice part of town, the projects, whatever you want to call them. So we were walking, we walked past this little girl's house, and then all of a sudden she came up to us and she grabbed on my shoulder. She was like, I want to learn about your religion. She just kept shouting at the young and jumping up and down. And then me and this other girl named Mimi, we didn't know what to do. So then I told her about VBS. And then she told her mom, and it worked out perfectly because the program's from 2 to 14. Her youngest is 2, so she can all of her kids here to VBS.
That's all about
And the pizza delivery guy came while we were talking to him. He was like, oh yeah, VBS is awesome. I put my kids through every year.
And so I'm not canvassing this year, I'm just leading, and I want to share with you some experiences that I had last year. One day I was really depressed. I just found out that my friend Danny Vieira had died. He's a personal friend of mine. I've known him for years. Any of you ever heard of Danny Vieira? Waterman? Okay, this is a West Coast thing, so not surprised. And I was in a trailer park. I met with a man who I started talking with, and we have to find ways of connecting with people. We have to find things that we have in common, kind of just be observant of their homes, see if there's anything there that we can connect with. And one thing I noticed was that he resonated with the topic of pets. And so we started talking about pets and how pets reflect the character of God to us. For us guys, it's usually dogs. For ladies, it's usually cats. But, you know, how many of you have had a dog and you just remember the dog just comes back and loves you no matter what? It's awesome, right? So it turns out, after I started to get to know him, his wife, it turns out, was dying in the hospital and had been given 2 weeks to live. And on top of that, he hadn't been to church in 25 years, but before that, he had been a youth leader, and he had been a church music director. So he was deeply involved. He had been deeply hurt by something that occurred in church. His wife had had an affair, and then he went to the pastor, who was his wife's uncle, and the elder and the pastor just laughed at him. And after that, he left church, and he never returned. So just a quick little lesson about how we really need to be kind to one another. So I asked him if he would be willing for me to have some Bible studies with him, bring him to his house, and he said, yeah, he'd be willing. So he took a book that we saw, it's called Peace Above the Storm, which is basically Steps to Christ. It's been given a bunch of beautiful images, and it's divided up in a way that's encouraging. Great to read for me. And he says, you know, my wife would probably like this book, and why don't you come back and visit me? So I came back and visited him a few more times, and I started to get closer and closer to him. And finally he said, you know, why don't you come with me to the hospital? And I said, you know, that's fantastic. But at the hospital, she's in the ICU, and she's not expected to live very long. They actually don't allow anybody but immediate family in there. And once I found out where he camped out in the hospital, I came to check on him one day. He wasn't there. I gave him a call. He wasn't there. I went to his house. He wasn't there. And so I went back to the hospital and looked one more time where he was. He wasn't there. And I said, Lord, well, surely there's a reason you brought me here. And I had been wanting to extend the gospel to this lady. I had been wanting to give her a chance to accept Jesus before she died. And you know, the ICU was closed, but I said, I'm just going to try to get in there anyhow. All right, sometimes we've got to take some chances for the Lord. Yes, this is my mischievous self coming out. And the door was locked, and I noticed there was an intercom there, and I said, you know, maybe I'm just going to call and see if they'll somehow let me in. And sure enough, they said, you know, who are you looking for? I'm looking for so-and-so. And they said, yeah, we'll talk to her. And they brought me right in thinking I was her husband. I had to... So I shared with her some scriptures, and I invited her to accept the Lord, and she openly, outwardly accepted the Lord and received the Lord into her heart then. And I was just so grateful to be able to minister to somebody at the end of their life who, having received the gospel, is going to be with us in paradise, right? So I went back home, and I later called Brian up, and he said, my wife's out of the hospital. In fact, she got out 2 days later. So she hasn't returned, as far as I know, and it's been over a year. So she accepted the Lord, and mysteriously, the Lord just extended her life. What an amazing experience. That same neighborhood I was colporteuring, I went into a store, a discount grocery store, and I started talking with one of the ladies there. And I started sharing my testimony. You guys don't know, but I come from a bit of a rough background. I've got tattoos, scars, piercings, and just a dark past that the Lord has saved me from. And she said, you know what, do you by any chance preach? Because our church has just been going through a terrible ordeal, and we're a Baptist community, and we don't have a minister. And you know what, they made me their temporary pastor. And I got to share with them. And now it did come to an end after I shared with them a message on the great controversy and how the Baptist Church came out of Catholicism, because that very year the Baptist Church had made an agreement to join hands with Catholicism again. And while some of the members were absolutely for that, others did not like that, and I was never invited back. But the message was out, so praise the Lord for that. And I've got one more testimony. This is just a testimony of divine providence. Life can get lonely. All of us know that. Sometimes we can struggle with our faith. I mean, we're here in church and we're trying to put on a front. The reality is we all have our struggles. When we leave, reality sets in, and life is life. Well, in 2010, I had gone to Mission College. I just graduated. I was one of the top students, and I had gotten 3 offers for different positions. And I was back home in my town, and all 3 of them fell through in 1 week. And all of my friends who were seeking to get hired got hired. And I was so depressed. I was so discouraged. Here I am, back in the hometown that I was raised in. Fortunately, I had my own place. But, I was just starting to give up on that. And I was laying on the back of my truck one night. It was a beautiful starlit night, and I had a beautiful view of the stars there. And I was just talking to God, and I said, Lord, I can't stand this. I can't take this anymore. I know you're real. I know you're real, but this is so discouraging. I don't know why I'm here in this town. Why am I here? What am I doing here? Why did all of these doors close on me? I was one of the best students. And I said, I really need to hear from you right now. And as I'm sitting there looking up at the stars, this beautiful dove just flies right over me and lands on a power pole. I thought, that's intriguing. But Lord, I need a little bit more than that right now, because I'm about to give up. And so I went into my room in my house, and I had a big bookshelf. I'd say tens of thousands of pages of books. And I said, Lord, this is the last chance I'm giving you. I can't do this any longer. I know you're real. It's not that I don't know that you're real. I just can't take this anymore. Why am I here? I'm ready to give up. Would you please speak to me as I reach out and just, without looking, pull a book out of the shelf. Now I'm going to just pause here for a moment. Guys, what's my name? Okay. How many of you guys have ever met a Q before? Not one hand. I've never met a Q before. I've heard of a Q before. It was a name given to me by my mentor, a Green Beret, who brought me into the church. I used to be a Catholic. And, like I said, in the last 20 years, I haven't heard of one Q. All right, back to my story. I'm in my room. I just prayed to the Lord. I'm at the end of my wits. And I reach out blindly, and I pull out a book, and I just open to it. And remember, I'm asking God, why on earth am I here? You're real, but are you really with me? And the first words my eyes landed on were, God's presence a reality. Dear Brother Q.
God spoke to you. I'm glad you are today in blank. And if you make what? Good of yourself.
Basically it says, Dear Brother Q, I am glad you are today in blank. Well, for me that was Watsonville, California. And if you make good your trust, you will be the right man in the right place. Keep self out of sight, which for me was a problem because I was definitely an exceptional student at the time. It was very difficult for me to keep my pride out of the situation. You're doing nothing. So I'm not making up a story. Can you guys imagine experiencing that? So I just want to encourage you guys. God is always with you. He is always looking out for you. And He has a plan for your life. And if you ever feel discouraged, ask Him to reveal Himself to you, and He will.
Amen. Thank you, guys. Are you thankful they're working in our streets? For one more week. One more week they're knocking on doors in that community. If they knock on your door, you know what to do. Besides for water. DBS is next week, so keep that in prayer as well. We're starting on Monday at 6 o'clock. And I might need some of you to come help me out. I know I already have some volunteers, but I might be talking to you over potluck to see if you can help out in any extra way. Let's have a word of prayer one more time, and Andres is going to come up and share a little Bible study with us. And then to end the Bible study off, I'm going to have Ben share a closing special music. That's the word I was looking for. Let's pray. Andres, why don't you come over here? I'll pray for you. Let's pray. Father, bless the lips of Andres Garcia, that you would bury him beneath the cross, help him to not even be seen or heard, but let your Spirit be seen and heard. Thank you and pray in your name. Amen.
Happy Sabbath.
Sabbath.
We've missed you guys. I haven't been here a couple of months, but I'm glad to see the other captain group here and all you guys. And hopefully a couple of last things before Pastor Matt leaves. I hope you guys aren't too sad. But we start today by opening your Bibles to Psalms chapter 37, verses 23 and 24. Psalms 37, verses 23 and 24. It's one of my favorite Bible verses. And if you have it, you can follow me with your eyes. When you have it, it says, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholds him with his hand." This is a beautiful Bible promise, yes or no? Yes? Can you hear me? This is a beautiful Bible promise. That when we fall, we're not utterly cast down, for the Lord upholds us with his hand. How many of us, just think about this, how many of you guys have fallen in some sort of way in your life? Many of us. I mean, everybody should be raising their hands and thinking that all of us have fallen in some way or another. Beautiful promise. I remember, just as Q was saying, God has saved me from a lot of things in my past. I'm sure God has saved you guys from a lot of things in your past. And I just praise God for this Bible promise and many others. Today I want to speak to the youth and to every other adult in this congregation. And I just wanted to share with you guys three things. I want to teach one way, so I think memorizing lists is a much easier way to memorize, right? So we're going to go through three pieces of advice that I wish I knew before I started my Christian walk. So let's start with going to Proverbs, chapter 22 and verse 6. Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 6. Okay. And it says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not" what? "Depart from it." Train a child in the way he should go. Is that easy? How many of you guys here are parents, or hopefully you parents, or at least have dealt with youth? Is it easy to train? Sorry?
What Bible verse did you say?
Proverbs 22, verse 6.
22.
Yes.
Oh, I was in 27.
Yeah, Proverbs 22, verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go. So many of us know who have dealt with either kids or youth, or have been a youth in the past. How many of you guys have thought it was easy to deal with people, to instruct people, to teach people? Is it always easy? No. Do people get it? Most of the time you tell them something and they'll do it? No, sometimes you have to repeat yourself multiple times. The good thing is, so just the same responsibility, what does the instructor or the parent have to do? What do they have to do? Instruct, right? They have to instruct the child in the way it should go. So the job of a parent or of somebody who's in charge of something is to train somebody in the way they should go. And we know that it's not always easy, especially if you're a parent. Now turn with me to Exodus chapter 20 and verse 12. Exodus chapter 20 and verse 12. I think it's sometimes an overlooked verse. It's one of the commandments. It's commandment number 5. And it says, "Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you. Honor who? Your father and your mother. And if you hear the young co-porters here, you have to understand that it's the responsibility of a parent or an instructor, of somebody who's in charge to instruct the child. It's the same responsibility of a child to obey, to honor your father and your mother. I know that a lot of people nowadays have many temptations. And adults and parents here, you have to understand that the same childhood that you had is not the same childhood that these young people here are having. It's very different. It is very different. Technology, other temptations have come in the way that have made it very difficult for young children to just want to obey sometimes. Is it always easy to obey? Yes or no? No. Yes or no? Okay, so let's go to the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verses 6 through 9. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 6 through 9. And you have with me, Charles, can you read it, please? Hebrews chapter 12, verses 6 through 9.
For whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. If ye endure chastening, God dealeth with you as with sons. For what son is he whom the Father chasteneth not? But if ye be without chastisement, whereof all are partakers, are ye bastards and not sons? Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh, which corrected us, and we have gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of spirits and live?
Thank you.
Amen.
So, if you go to verse 6, it says, For whom the Lord loves, he what? He chastens. It's not always just all fun and games when a parent or somebody in charge wants to instruct the child in the way he should go. Right? It's not always easy for the children to learn and to obey and honor your father and mother. But he who the Lord loves, and even the parents who the Lord loves, and even the parents who love, is it important to discipline? Is discipline important? I remember one time I was canvassing, and at just this Q and among other co-porters are teaching other younger co-porters how to canvass. This guy was always on me. The stuff I said, the way I dressed, and all this stuff. And I remember he would always discipline me. He would just pull me aside and talk to me, hey, Andres, you can't do this, this, and this. I'm like, oh my goodness. All these rules. And I didn't like this guy. Maybe, I will mention names. Some of you guys might know him if you guys go to Southern or know this guy. But it ended up being the leader, my co-porter leader that I respected the most. Sometimes discipline is not always easy, but you'll end up gaining the most out of it. And just the first lesson is just the responsibility, just as the adults have the responsibility of teaching their children, and the children, the same responsibility to the children have of learning. But just answer me this question. Can the adults or parents learn something from their children? Yes or no? Is it, yeah? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. So, let me tell you a story. This is a personal story, okay? About my parents. So don't share with them if you ever guys meet them. Don't tell them I said this. Okay? I remember I was 15 years old. It's a long time ago. I'm not going to share how old I am right now, but it was a long time ago. My parents, they were in a fight. And you know how there's always that one person, either husband or wife, who just keeps picking at it, picking at it. There's always that one person, right? This time, it was one of them. I'm not going to say which one it was. But they were fighting. And I was 15 years old and I couldn't understand, what was the big deal about what was going on. But they just kept fighting and fighting. And it came to the point where one of them, my father was going to leave the house. And how did you think I took it as a teenager? Did I think, oh, that's really nice, that they're fighting and he's leaving the house? No, I was devastated. I was really sad about what was going on. And what happened was that he ended up leaving. He ended up leaving the house because they were in a fight really bad. And then afterwards, I couldn't understand. I talked to my mom, why can't you just cave? Why can't you just listen to him and just open up your heart? She was like, no, I can't. Pride and all this anger, whatever had happened. And I just, when they came, my dad came over and I talked to them and I was like, why can't you guys just talk it out? Why can't you guys just open up your hearts, just be humble, and just listen to each other? And what happened was that they talked it out, and it was all good. And what my mom told me later on, she said, Andres, she said, really thank you for telling us that, because if it weren't for you, I probably would have been upset with your father much, much longer. And I remember that to this day because it was really personal to me. It was a big thing that was going on in my home, but praise God that they're still married and they're in California right now, so they won't hear this story. So sometimes youth and children, you guys can teach your parents something. Teach them something. Now we're going to go to point number 2, which is all of us will be attacked by many things in our life, but are we able to overcome the temptations that come our way? Are we able to? Through Jesus, yes. Let's turn our Bibles to 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13 is one of my favorite verses. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. It says, no temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will also make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. How many of you guys have I remember David Ashwick was one time saying that he was preaching. And he asked somebody he asked the congregation to read John chapter 3, verse 16. For God so loved the what? World, right? And you notice that when he asked that half the congregation wasn't opening the Bible to read that. Why was it? Because most of them had it memorized, right? It's one of the most famous Bible verses in the Bible. One of our biggest mistakes is that we often read the Bible. And we read it so fast, we go through it because we've gone through it oftentimes that we don't realize the importance and the impact that it can have on us. This verse, knowing that no temptation of the Lord taken as such as is common to man, but God is what? God is faithful. God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. Or the temptation will make a way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. Now, let's just make this clear, just so we're on the same page. Do the temptations that come our way, do we have an escape to it? Do you have a way of escape? According to this verse, yes or no? Yes. Yes. So that means that we don't fall, right? So if this verse is true, then that means that when temptations come our way, we never fall. Is that true? No. Many of us go back in your mind. Remember the time that you've fallen. If you realize in your heart and you truly repented, Did God take you back, yes or no? Yes, let's open our Bibles to Proverbs chapter 24, verse 16. Proverbs chapter 24, verse 16. And it says, "For the righteous man may fall 7 times and rise again, but the wicked shall fall by calamity." This is a very important verse, because what it tells us that the righteous man falls how many times? Many times, 7 times. But what happens? What happens? He rises again. You know, what's beautiful about the Bible is that it teaches us that with every temptation, there's a way of escape. There's a way of escape in every temptation. No temptation has taken it such as is common to man. So the Lord will not make anything new for us. But with every temptation, whatever it may be, there's a way of escape. The thing is, sometimes many of us have fallen. Many of us have fallen, but the good thing is that the righteous man falls 7 times but gets back up. There's this illustration that there's, the Christian walk. The Christian walk is not always easy. Imagine, can everybody see my fingers? Can everybody see them? Yeah, how many fingers am I raising up? 2. Now? 3, okay. So imagine these 2 fingers are somebody walking. So let's say there's a line right here, invisible line, the Christian walk. So you're trying to walk the Christian walk and you fall. And you get what? Back up. And then you take 1 step, and what happens? And you get? Then you take 3 steps. Is that good? Yeah. It's better than 1, right? And you fall, and you what? And then you take 5 steps, and you fall. Is that bad? That you fall? Right? Is that bad? That you fall? Yes or no? And then you what? The Christian walk may be this way. The good thing is that one day you may fall, and then you'll get back up. And you'll keep on walking. And that same temptation which you fell many times, you're able to overcome it one day. Praise God. So I just want to tell you guys, whatever it may be, if anybody has fallen, you can always get back up. I remember this story about, it's a real story about a roommate. This guy had a roommate, and he would be doing school and be doing work at the same time. So whenever he would finish school, he would go to work. When he finished work, he would come back home around midnight, and his roommate would have people drinking in his apartment. And that was a temptation for him. And now this young man, they would ask him, "Hey, come drink with us. You live here anyways." So this man would go and drink with them. And then one day, he would come back after work, same thing. Roommates would have a party in the apartment, and he lived there, and they invited him, and he came over and drank with them. And then one day, this young man, he just wanted to stop that. So he went, they invited him to a youth event, and they made an appeal, and he stood up. And now what happened is that he had a change of heart. And then what happened was that he would come back, and the same thing. He would have people drinking in his apartment, his roommate with his friends. And what happened one day was that he came over and they offered him something, and he said, "No, thank you. No, thank you." And the next time he came up and he drank, even though he had stood up for the appeal. Then one day he stopped drinking, just said no to them, and he said, "No, thank you." And they asked him, "Why? What happened? I used to do this before." And he said, "No, thank you. I just had to change your heart." And he explained to them what happened. They said, "Okay." And then he through this decision, he just said, "I don't have to put up with this anymore." So he told his roommate, "Hey, just let's have a proper conversation." And they said, "Can we, is it fine that that when I come from work that you don't have your friends here anymore? Can you guys at least go do that somewhere else? And his roommate got so upset that they were both eating, and he got both plates and he threw them off the table and they fell on the floor. Was this a good reaction, yes or no? No, it's not a good reaction. And what happened was that eventually he got over it. He didn't invite his friends anymore. By God's grace, now they're both attending church. Now they're both participating along with special music. They give their lives to Christ. We don't realize that we can sometimes overcome some things and help others through the way. Through our own walk, through our own falls, through us getting back up, we can impact others. Now, let's go to the last one, which is we have to start taking our spiritual lives more seriously. Start taking our spiritual lives more seriously, which means, in other words, our relationship with who has to get better? With Jesus, God. Let's turn to the book of Luke, chapter 2, verses 42 to 47. Luke chapter 2. Luke chapter 2, verses 42, all the way to 49. Excuse me, sorry. Luke chapter 2, verses 42. Can you say amen when you guys are there? Amen. And he said, and when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to the custom of the feast. Who are we talking about here? Who? Jesus. We're talking about Jesus. Let's jump to verse 46. And it says, now so it was that after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. So when they saw him, his parents, not yet, they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said to him, son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously. And he said to them, why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my father's business? How many of us would have never thought about telling our parents that, just leaving the house for 3 days, staying back and staying at the temple, or staying speaking to the Pharisees about the Word of God? How many of us nowadays could imagine that? Many of us just picture it, just read the story. But what Jesus was saying is that it was more important to care about his spiritual life than anything else. So, if Jesus, who is our best example, cares about his spiritual life, you think that should be important to us, yes or no? Amen. Yes. I have this quote from Help in Daily Living that says, just give you a summary. You can ask me for the reference right now. It's too long, so I'll make it shorter. The idea is that not only, coming to church is fine and reading the Bible and sharing it with others. But it tells us that it will have no effect on our lives personally unless we experience what we read in our lives for ourselves. If we don't experience these things to our relationship with God, what's the point? What's the point of all this? So, let me show you guys the story of this pastor who is going away as a missionary. Not like Pastor Matthew. Pastor Matthew is actually leaving us. But this is a story about this pastor in China. He was a missionary in China, and he left for 2 weeks. 2 weeks to China to be a missionary. And he went there in a room, probably about half of this room. So imagine a room half this size. And he went there and he was preaching the word. And people were sitting on the floor just listening to him. And then the second day, people grew more. And the third day, people grew more. And people were just listening to him, and they were singing songs praising God. And it was week and it was about 2 days left. And he's telling me that, in 2 days I have to leave. I have to leave in 2 days. And they were sad because they didn't really get too many preachers in that place. And what happened was that this last day came, and the room was packed. I didn't mention they had no carpet and they had no air conditioning. And so the pastor was about to leave. And they were saying, no, pastor, please don't leave us. We've learned a lot, we've grown in numbers, and we're here, and we wish us, oh man, how we wish we were in America. The United States, because you guys have churches everywhere. There's one in every city. I remember I was in Muncie, and I was Googling on this website that shows you all the churches that are around. And I think close to the Muncie Seventh-day Adventist Church, there's about 10 churches around nearby. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, there's a lot of churches here. And going back to the story, they were saying, you guys have a lot of churches everywhere. We wish we were like you guys. And then the pastor took a moment and he said, no. He says, you don't want to go to America. And they said, why? Isn't this the land of opportunity? A lot of immigrants come here and all this and all that. And he said, yes, we have a lot of churches. He said, but I haven't seen them study the Word of God like you guys do. He said, I haven't seen them praise God the way you guys do. The way you guys do. I haven't seen them invite so many people and congregate. Yes, have been here 2 weeks, air conditioning, and I'm sitting on the floor saying, you haven't complained one bit. He said, you don't want to be like us. He said, we should be more like you. Sometimes we're too comfortable in our spiritual lives that we take for granted the blessings that we have in this country or in this place. That if other people had it, if we had the same needs as others, how our lives would be different. So, just going a quick summary of the 3 points. The same responsibility that parents have to instruct the children, so the children have the responsibility to learn. And sometimes the children can teach the parents as well. Point number 2 was that there's going to be many temptations that come our way, but we're able to overcome them. And point number 3, and the last point, is that we really should focus on gaining a better spiritual experience, a better relationship with God. Because in the end, that's all that matters. Sometimes one day realize that all the material things that are in this world won't matter. When whether you're on your deathbed or have an experience, you'll realize that all these things that we have don't matter unless we have a relationship with God. So, I hope these things can resonate and you can think about them during the week. And, may God continue to keep adding a blessing to His Word. So, with these words, let's just bow our heads for a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray for this church, Father. I pray that for the young children and the adults here, Father, that we may keep growing and realizing, Father, to examine ourselves upon your word, Father, as a mirror, to look at ourselves and see what things we need, Father. And help us realize that the best thing that we can do is just a better relationship with you, Father. To look at us. And Father, you want to teach us so many things. I pray that we are humble enough to listen. I pray for unity in this church, Father. I pray that you may keep our hearts growing and waiting upon your second coming. Help us realize the time that we have, Father. You told us that in your word that whenever, we fall, that you're there with us, Father. Help us realize this. Help us be more like you. Help us be like Jesus, totally dependent on the Father. We pray for for the churches around the world, Father, that we may not give up our faith, and we may keep on growing. I pray for the pastor of this church, that he might continue leading this congregation, Father, and help us all to be humble. Help us be humble and seek for you, Father. Help us spend time this week in secret prayer, just opening our hearts to you and seeking you, Father. I pray for safety, and I pray for other things that are unmentioned, Father. If anybody has any things here that they want to give to you, Lord, I pray that they might give them to you. I pray for all of us here, Father, in a relationship with you. Help us see your name. In my prayer. Amen.